the midst of a huge transformation where our peers, communities, and workplaces are all really melding into one. Welcome to Reimagining Company Culture. My name is Christina Giordano, she, her, and hers, and I'm the Partnerships and Community Manager here at AllVoices. Today, I'm really excited to welcome our next guest onto the show, Tim Betry. He is the Vice President of People and Places at GoPro. Tim, thanks so much for being here. If you want to share a little bit about yourself, including your pronouns, and when you were when you were young, when did you answer the question, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah, no, thanks for Christina. Thanks for having me. Hi, all. My name is Tim Betry, he, him, his, and I am the Vice President of People and Places at GoPro. First off, I just want to say I love my job. I love what I do. I love being a people leader, and I'm excited to share some of the great things that we've done, not only at GoPro, but just some of the things that I've seen other industry leaders in the HR space do as well. So to start, I run Global People and Places, which is inclusive of all things under the HR umbrella, but also Places, which is workplace services, real estate. Now, as we're moving predominantly remote, workplace experience, and as well as security operations. So a lot of fun areas, and it's pretty cool. Personal journey about me and what I expected to do when I grew up. I had no freaking clue. I thought I was going to be a history teacher. I actually went to undergrad to be a history major. And once I graduated, I decided, I think I may be more cut out for sales. And I got into sales and then navigated into recruiting. So it's this really interesting journey of not really understanding where I wanted to be or what I wanted to do. But I think that's really what shaped me into who I am today. So it's really a cool journey in that respect.
I love it. I appreciate when you said that you love your job and the things that you get to do and all of the it sounds like big projects in your role at GoPro. Let's dig in a little bit deeper into your personal journey, what really led you to GoPro.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, when I graduated, I got into sales and I navigated my path through recruiting, and I found that recruiting was a really interesting entry point for me, especially in the HR space, because it allowed me to understand how organizations are structured. I got to talk to candidates constantly and figure out what are they interested, what makes them tick, what's truly an employer of choice, and then I got to work a lot with managers to understand a little bit more about their functions, their teams, all the different departments. And I think when I look back at my career, I think that was an amazing stepping stone because it allowed me to really think holistically about an organization. What does resourcing look like? What do these different teams do? And so now when I get down to the weeds of like a marketing specialist, a software engineer, some sort of a sales operations analyst, I know exactly what they've done because I've recruited on all of those positions. So that's been really great for me just in terms of my progression. But then you asked me a little bit about my personal journey. I think from an HR perspective, I know that a lot of my role is like listening and understanding employees and thinking about, what makes them tick, what's going on in their lives. And now more than ever, especially during this pandemic, it's been really important for me to think of, everybody has their own experiences. Everybody's going through their own life challenges. Yeah. And as a personal individual, I have my own life challenges as well. I was a heavy addict and alcoholic going through high school and college. And I struggled pretty heavily with addiction issues. And it wasn't until a little more than 10 years ago that I had to make the active decision to handle my stress and anxiety in other ways. And I decided to sober up. And when I look back at that experience, I think that really shaped who I am today. It shaped where I came from. It shaped my understanding of the whole individual. And so as an HR leader, when I look at employees and when I look at how we're really showing up and supporting employees, it's recognizing that everybody has their own life experiences. And the more we as an employer can take that to embrace it and to make sure that we're really thinking about each employee as individuals who have lives, who have challenges, who have struggles, that's who we are. That's how we can show up to best support the people around us. So, it's really been the personal journey plus the recruiting side is really how I ended up where I am today. And GoPro is just an amazing company. It aligned with my values and who I am as an individual. And I've been here for a little more than 3 years now.
That's incredible. And thank you so much for sharing your story and also practicing kind of vulnerability on our show as well. I'm sure a lot of folks who are listening really appreciate that as well, in terms of our lived experiences are part of who we are and how we show up to work. And especially over the past 2+ years, people are talking more about their personal challenges and just bringing their full selves to work as well. We've talked about this a bit around kind of your workplace philosophy at GoPro. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you think about the role of kind of work and the future of work there?
Yeah, totally. I mean, future of work is a big topic right now, and I'm happy to share any of the insights around what we're doing, or also what I think might happen in the market. But just in general, like we were all forced into remote work with the pandemic, and right now a lot of companies are grappling with the idea of, do we go back to the office? Do we stay remote? And for GoPro, we very much adopted the philosophy of employee choice. We're going to have offices as a landing pad. We're going to provide those as a place for people to go into if they need separation from home, or if they want to get that in-office engagement vibe that we had before. But we're very much going to be a remote first company. So it's going to be focused on really people going to operate in a remote fashion. We're going to hire distributed. We're going to offer up opportunities for employees to move wherever they want. But then we also have offices to support folks that need to be to come in. And we're still going to have engagement opportunities remote and in person. So that's really our philosophy around workplace design. And then when I think about just the workplace philosophy in general, we've shifted a little bit of how we show up for employees, because in reality, the way you manage employees, or the way you operate as an employee, is completely different. It's totally shifted with this new workplace design and being remote, where employees previously were like, I show up to work, I go in the office, it looks like I'm doing my job, so I'm going to feel good about that. Now they don't necessarily have that feeling, and managers are freaking out a little bit. And they're like, I don't know if my employee's working all the time. I don't know if they're doing their job. So we've focused a lot around like output over time worked, and making sure that we're looking at what individuals are contributing to the organization, rather than just thinking about like, oh, they're showing up or they're clocking in, because we don't do clock in and clock out. And so it's just enabling and offering a trust element, and also a sense of autonomy, um, and to support for employees to get their jobs done, but also for managers to trust that their teams are going to do the work that they've set out to do.
Trust is a big component of, especially when you have that choice of the reality of, if you don't have enough space in your home, or you can't work from home, having the option to go into the office. But a lot of people do enjoy the flexibility as well, so making sure you're meeting people where you are, and again, trusting them to do their best work and have that conversation, not a clock in clock out mentality. But at GoPro, you're a global organization, you're working when other people are actually sleeping, and you have teams, in different time zones as well. What's an example of a successful asynchronous process, like you said, enabling folks to do their best work even when others are not online?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's been technology enablement, and providing flexibility around different programs and different structures. The old thought process of like, we're going to have a meeting, everybody in the office gathers together in a conference room, or in a remote environment, we're going to have a meeting, everybody gets together on the same Zoom meeting, is not the case anymore. We've been able to record meetings for trainings. You just record trainings. I've offered up a lot of opportunities on the people team, and for our onboarding, for our L&D sessions, where we're going to be a lot more structured in how we create the content and make it available, whether that's through our LMS system or other types of systems, so that people can view it at their leisure.
Mhm.
Because when I think about people at a home environment, there's families, kids,
Right.
elders that we need to care for. It's this like natural merger between work and life that's happening. And so to expect that there's going to be um, people that are constantly available during the typical 9 to 5 or whatever that may be, um, it's non-existent at the moment. And so when I think of asynchronous work, like when I'm navigating Europe and Asia, it makes it a lot easier when we have the means and the expectation set of like, hey, it's okay to watch a recording, it's okay to follow up separately with key takeaways or follow-up questions. And so when you start to embed that in your culture, naturally you get a little bit more flexibility around this expectation that people had previously of like, oh, I'm in Europe, I need to stay up until 7 or 8 p.m. listening to these calls with the US, or I'm in the US and I have to have calls with the Asia team until 8 p.m. at night. Like that is out the window. So it's been really great in that regard. I will say as well, on the flip side, there's a natural element of flexibility that comes with remote work as well. And
Yeah.
I'll talk about this maybe in a little bit, but like we've really focused on output over time work, but also showing that like do the job to get the job done, but also appreciate life. But in some cases, like maybe the job is log on at 8 or 9 if you want, but then take a big block of time during the daytime and enjoy, going for a walk, going out for lunch with friends, going out to the beach and going surfing. But then logging on later in the evening for an hour to talk to Asia. Like if that's acceptable to you as an employee, then great, do it. We don't need to be so rigid around the time that we're operating because we naturally know that we all have lives and we need to function within the parameters we're provided with.
Absolutely. I think a lot of what you're talking about as well, instead of work-life balance, work-life blend, because the reality is sometimes you are going to kind of take that meeting at 8 p.m., but the next day it's okay to take a longer kind of lunch break. It's okay to take time to do what you need to do with your family. And if you're caretaking, as you were talking about earlier as well, people have other parts of their lives going on, and you're just going to have to shift that balance sometimes because it's all blended up together as well. I keep looking at your background because it is a great GoPro photo, and I want to talk about your mission at GoPro. You've mentioned a couple times just the natural kind of culture that happens there as well in terms of doing your best work. And part of that mission is celebrating all things awesome, allowing users to capture every moment, and also share that with their community. How do you bring that mission internally, and what does that look like actually in practice?
Cool. Love this question. First off, yeah, GoPro has some pretty sweet backgrounds. I'll blend through or go through a couple of them
Oh, I like
while
that.
we're on the call. Oh, you like this one? Nice. I
Yeah.
like the diving one,
Oh, that's cool.
especially. Yeah. So we definitely have some sweet backgrounds, just being a mostly digital imaging company that's now getting the software and services. But yes, our mission is really to be a force for positivity in the world, celebrating all things awesome and making sure that we can unlock opportunities for consumers to really live their best lives. And so um, when we entered the pandemic too, we started to really think about like, who are we at our core? Like, what are we really focused on? And we really came back to this mission and we thought, okay, let's bring this internally to employees. And how can we unlock opportunities for employees now, especially in this remote environment, to live their best lives? Because
Mhm.
naturally, if you're living your best life, you're going to be a happier, healthier, and ultimately more productive employee. And so when we created our workforce design plans, our pay philosophies, we wanted to make sure that it was employee first and employee centric. So we did just that. I mean, first, like many companies have done, we used engagement surveys to get pulses on how's the organization feeling. But then we used that data and we asked some really concrete questions around like workforce design. What do you prefer? What's the ideal in office or remote setting for you? And we learned that it was kind of a hodgepodge, and that's where we landed with the we're going to have some offices and we're going to unlock opportunities for people to move remote. And so for me, it's really just making sure that we're doing what employees want, and whether that's creating the policies and programs or defining how we want to show up at work. Those really come out through the feedback that they've given. And I'll just say this one other thing. We previously used to have this benefit called Live It, which was 2 hours during the day. We would give employees an opportunity to go out and live it, live their best lives, capture the moment with their GoPro, go surfing, go skateboarding, go hang out with family, do whatever that may be. And naturally, that just actually is carried over into our work philosophy, which is don't stress so much on the time worked, right? As you mentioned earlier, there's this natural clash happening between work and life. And so the more we can have flexibility and the more we can train our leaders and managers to be flexible with employees, the better we're going to be for showing up, allowing employees to just live their best lives and to be more productive at work when they're working. And so looking at output, looking at goals tracking, making sure that people are doing their jobs, but recognizing that like that's not going to be dictated by time work. And so if somebody wants to take an hour, 2 or 3 in the morning to go jogging or hiking or surfing or they want to go, snowboarding or skiing in the wintertime, whatever that may be. Let's provide that opportunity for them. As long as they're doing their meetings, they're taking care of, what's most important, which is um, their lives, but then also doing their jobs on the side and getting everything else done. We're fully supportive of that. So that's really how we've been able to practice what we preach, not only for our external consumers, but bringing that internally for our employees as well.
I mean, that sounds like a great workplace philosophy, and also understanding that people have full lives that include work. It's not just all about their work as well, and working efficiently, smarter, not longer as well. What does it look like for new team members to join GoPro too? This could be a completely different environment for them. What does the first 90 days look like as well in terms of onboarding?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things, and we've had to shift a lot moving remote as well. But I think the most important is just making sure people get their stuff on their first day, right? So it's like really having organized processes around making sure that people have a laptop, it's fully set up, they're enabled with all the technology, they have their first day dedicated to not jumping into meetings, but really a focused onboarding, a connection opportunity with the other remote employees that they're working with, and then really the afternoon to just get embedded with what we're expecting them to do and getting it set up with all the software and services that we offer. Um, but in terms of 90 days, there's a lot of connection points for us, and we feel it's super important as a workplace experience team to make sure that employees feel like they have an opportunity to connect with others on the team, whether that's through our DEIB programs, ERGs. We have GoPro guides, which is kind of like a buddy program, not mentor program, but really a safe haven if you have any questions about anything. We use Workplace for Facebook, and that's been really a remote culture hub for us to make sure that people can stay connected. They share photos, they share experiences together. So that's really cool. We give back to the community often, so just making sure that all the new hires get set up with GoPro for a cause, and if there's camera donations they want to send out, they can participate in that.
That's great.
And then just in general, like meeting with different team members, getting involved with the games and opportunities for connection, because we realize we don't have those office touch points that other new hires typically would have. And so right now it's really just making sure that they are enabled with those different programs that we do offer, so they can have that GoPro experience that we feel is so special and unique. And then the last thing I would say is, in terms of understanding the GoPro philosophy, the workforce philosophy, we have a really robust training and onboarding program where we bring in different department leaders. We have trained recorded content where we go through our workforce philosophy design. We go through expectations as a manager or as an employee. So people are really embedded with what are we expecting from you as an employee, so that you don't need to guess. Because the last thing we want employees to do is try to figure out their, how we operate on their own, because that's just a breed for stress and anxiety in the workplace, and that's the last thing we want. So just making sure that we're providing all of that on a plate for them to choose and to tap into. That's what provides a unique and a robust and complete onboarding experience. And so far, we've gotten really good feedback on it, but we're still learning as we go.
Absolutely. I think that feedback is so important, and especially creating those moments of connection when you're going into a place where you don't necessarily know everyone, and someone that you talk to a lot, I would say on a daily basis, or at least on a weekly basis as well, is your manager. People managers are so important for company culture. They may not talk to Tim or Christina every day, but you have kind of one-on-one time as well. Have you also, in terms of kind of change up how things go in a remote first environment, your approach to manager training as well in terms of remote first organization?
Yeah, I mean, as we went through last year, we had to completely rip up our L&D roadmap and reset it as we were navigating through COVID. So it was changing gears from like the more traditional manager topics around like feedback and performance management and development plans, which are still important, and we still do focus on those, but they were really focused on like EQ and resilience, leading through change. There was some big areas that we felt like were relevant during the time when we were changing gears, to be able to provide managers with the toolkit so that they could best show up and support employees. And we did the same thing for employees as well. It's like talking about resiliency was a big training that we rolled out. remote work best practices. So just giving employees a toolkit to tap into so that this change transition to remote was a lot more seamless. And I mentioned this earlier, like when we think about training, we really thought about it in four different stages. It's at the employee level, the manager level, the leadership level, and the company level. And so like for employees, it's naturally feeling anxiety because they're working remote. They don't know if they're being evaluated fairly. They don't know if all of the same things that applied when they were in the workplace apply to their remote environment. So we had to really change some of our trainings to support them through that. For managers, it was knowing that if you can't see an employee working, how can you still make sure that they're getting their job done? And then also, how can you make sure that you're showing up to support them on an emotion from an emotional standpoint, thinking about their mind, body, soul as they navigate work, but also their personal lives. And then as a leader, there's been this real big shift at GoPro where we've thought about agility. It's one of our core values, stay agile, but it's been focused on previously we used to think a lot about scaling for stability, right? It's that leadership philosophy where it's like you scale to stabilize your organization, but in reality we're in such an unstable not industry, but just political environment, social environment, et cetera, that you
Yeah.
actually need to scale for instability. Like how do you shift leaders mindset that they might have embedded in them for 20 years to start thinking about like, okay, let's future proof our organization now, thinking about the unthinkable. And so that's been a real interesting shift for our executive leadership team and extended leadership teams, through some of the coaching and the other training programs that we have. And then at the company wide level, it's just really embedding everything I just mentioned through our organizational philosophy and making sure that's cascaded down and has the support from Nick, our CEO, to me and everybody else, at the leadership level. So it's been a real big change management effort, but it's really, we structure it though in those four levels. And I think it's been holistic in that sense.
Absolutely. A holistic approach is so important. And this has come up a couple times in terms of strategies that you've talked about as well, in terms of remote first and understanding the benefits that are important to your team members as well. So I have to ask around employee feedback management, how you see that as a really important tool to build this culture of listening and trust, as you mentioned, and how you see this manifesting at the company at large.
Yeah, totally. I mean, so we use employee feedback regularly, and we're one of those companies that offers open Q&A for all of our all hands meetings. We want to make sure that people feel they have a safe space to come forward, that they feel comfortable coming forward, and that they also know we're going to have authentic, real responses to any question that really comes up. And so it breeds a sense of purpose, a sense of belonging when people feel like they can really be themselves and ask whatever they want, provide the feedback, and know that there's not going to be retaliation, and that it's going to be listened to and actioned on. So when we do our semi-annual surveys, we do a larger one in the fall, we do a shorter pulse survey in the spring. We take it, we share the results directly with the company. We talk about some of the improvement areas. We do brown bag breakout sessions to really gather additional insights. And then we action on it. We share what we're going to do and we share how we're going to act on some of the lower scores or some of the areas that we want to impact. I think through that, you get a lot of appreciation from employees because it's like we're not just taking a survey to take a survey and just get a pulse on what's up with the org, but it's how are we influencing change from this, and how can we let you know how your feedback is going to influence change. A lot of the survey and the engagement questions changed as well as we entered into COVID, where we started to get feedback around COVID response, employee safety, understanding who's comfortable going to the office, who isn't. And so by asking some of those questions, we've actually been really detailed in our COVID response, creating our phased approach, not rushing into judgment, not rushing to make judgment or answers on certain areas within how we're reapproaching the offices, but also understanding that you can't treat COVID response in a bubble and just across the entire globe. There's certain regions like Asia, or I should say China specifically, or the Philippines, where they were polar opposite. In the Philippines, we want to remain home, work from home for the foreseeable future. In China, it was we want to get back in the office. All my friends, government opens up the opportunities for us to go into the office, so we want to be there. And so we had to adjust our approach, but we did that based on employee feedback. And so I think that was really valued as well. and something that has been big in how we've shifted and designed our workforce strategy.
So important to offer those multiple channels to give feedback and to also perform the active listening as well to say, okay, what are you going to do with all of this feedback that you have received as well? What is your philosophy around anonymous feedback and its role in this whole strategy as well?
Yeah, so I think it's key. First, I just want to say, like, in an ideal world, there would never be a need for anonymous feedback because you have an environment where employees feel like they can come forward, um, and not need an anonymous portal. However, I just want to say it is critical that you have this portal as an avenue for employees to come forward, because it's very, very rare that you have all avenues in all areas where employees feel like they can come and they can voice concerns about certain things. So it's um, it's innate to your culture to create a safe space, but it's also a necessary addition to have opportunities for employees to share anonymous feedback, whether that's around diversity in the workplace, COVID protocols, harassment, bullying. There's so many different things, and not everybody feels comfortable coming to a person, going to their business partner, et cetera. And so for us, it's been a big, big avenue. And I know this is with AllVoices, but we leverage AllVoices frequently, and we advertise it frequently because it's one extra portal to know that employees do feel heard. They have that safe space to come forward. They have an opportunity to speak up, even if they don't want to disclose who they are, and that's okay, because it creates a enrichment of our culture to really show up and support the whole employee, regardless of how they want to provide that feedback.
Absolutely. Again, the common theme of meeting employees where they are today. Tim, you mentioned a couple of these, but are there any other examples you wanted to provide of just, a way that you, a GoPro, or the team has innovated or redesigned a system or process over the past 2 years?
Yeah, I mean, it's been such a dynamic time. It's such a cool opportunity for us, especially as HR leaders, to step up and to not only have a seat at the table, but to really be like a prime seat at the table. And it's been such a cool transition and a challenging time for us as well as people leaders um, to be able to really be bleeding edge in how we approach programs, of how we rethink workplace design, rethink technology that we're using. So I don't know. In response, like, we've been innovative with a lot of things: our workplace philosophy, our comp philosophies, how we're rethinking how we're listening to employees and shaping the workplace and office dynamics. I think the main takeaway for me, the biggest thing we've been innovative with is really around uh, self-service
Mhm.
and provide and using technology to operate with this environment we've been given, which is remote first, asynchronous. And so recognizing that we want to lean more on technology to enable connection points, to enable opportunities for people to stay uniquely bonded in these environments, using companies like Donut for social connection, Lattice for talent management, or whatever else it may be. Just Zoom, obviously, but just making sure that where we can, we're unlocking opportunities for employees to be productive. And so staying bleeding edge with that has been key. Also, we use ServiceNow, and I'm not just going through a list of like brands, but it's just really good to like think about some of the things that we've been shifting gears with, so that employees feel like they have this self-service module, so they don't need to come to somebody directly or go stop at your desk. It's available to them in some easy to read or easy to access format from their house, from their home, or wherever they may be.
Absolutely. You want to enable your team 100%. Tim, what's a must have people leaders need to incorporate in their strategy to successfully, continue on in our current workplace and think about the future success of their organization?
I'll try to mince my words a little bit, but leaders need to be proactive and not afraid to speak up, and to really lean in hard on what they feel is the best for employees. Um, Too often, I think there's a lot of leaders that are not in the HR field who are just very close-minded around in-office practices, how employees should think or feel, and I want people leaders to really be proactive and to lean in hard on what they know the employees need. And so to feel comfortable speaking up, to have that voice at the table, to make sure that we're advocating on behalf of the people, because that is what is going to future proof your organization. If you can retain your best talent, you can create an amazing workforce plan and design. You're really creating an org environment that's going to be culture rich, happy, productive, and ultimately successful. And I think if you put the people strategy aside and you start to just get, railroaded by decisions that are made without keeping people at the forefront of those decisions, then it becomes this, squashed, um, boring, archaic org design that, employees will probably opt out of. And so if you don't want to be a victim to the great resignation, it's time to step up.
Absolutely. People are one of your greatest assets to an organization as well. And you want to enable people to live their best lives and do really fulfilling work. Is there anything I didn't ask you, Tim, that you want to share, or one or two key insights you hope listeners bring with them after hearing our conversation today?
I mentioned it earlier, but I think, I'm going to lean in with this is a really cool time for all leaders in general to rethink how we can support organizations and employees post pandemic. And so, leaning in with the co-opetition, like let's collectively work together to make the industry, to make organizations more healthy for employees. Let's change workforce dynamics. Let's change labor dynamics. Let's be thinking ahead 5, 10, 20, 30 years from now so that we can look back and say, thank thank God there's people leaders that leaned in to really change the labor markets today, because there are we're at a really pivotal point. And if we can all collectively agree that, like, hey, this is something we need to do as an org for the industry, for the people, for employees, then we can really be successful in making this change happen. So that would be my biggest takeaway, is like, let's all work together. We can make work more healthy, more enjoyable, but we need to do it as a collective group.
You're not alone in this work, absolutely, and doing this work as a collective is important. So I think that's a great insight to end our conversation on. Tim, thank you so much for being on Reimagining Company Culture. It was good to see you.
You too. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And as a reminder for folks who are listening at AllVoices, we really believe in that employee feedback and management as a requirement for the company to succeed. Have a good rest of your day, everyone.